Rally. Wow, it's real. It's continuing on, and I am so proud to be able to do this every last Saturday of every month. Just a few logistics, as always. We have these amazing storytellers. They get 7 to 10 minutes each to share a story of courage, perseverance, defying the odds, owning their truths. And again, our goal is to inspire and empower others to be themselves. So if you could leave here feeling a little bit less alone or 100% more inspired, then that is the goal. We've done our job. As each storyteller speaks, I will introduce them. As they speak, if you feel like you can relate to what they're saying, if you feel like they're going back to that place that brings them emotion, and you can sense that as they're speaking, feel free and show some kindness, show some love, show some old-fashioned hearts with your hands, or use the reaction buttons and show hearts like that. Also, if you feel like you can resonate, do that as well, so they know that like their words are really moving you, and you can really relate and not feel so alone. So that's the really thing how the rally goes. And after each storyteller, I'll open it up to anyone that has comments or that would like to say anything to our storytellers, and we'll move on. As always, I come on not knowing what I'm going to say at the beginning, because just like I started these rallies, I never knew I was intentionally going to start them. I thought it was a one-time thing back in June 2020, because I wanted to do something positive in the light of everything going on with George Floyd and all of that. And little did I know it would become a monthly thing. So I just trusted my journey. I trusted my words. I trusted what was inside of me when I woke up. And that's what I'm doing today. And that's what I promise to do every single time, because I think it's so important to take a step back and just listen to yourself. Not those little nagging words, those words that are trying to make sure that you're perfect or that is criticizing you, but listen to yourself beyond the trash. As one of our, I will get to their bio, but one of our speakers says that in their LinkedIn. I want you to listen to yourself, to your heart, all the way to your heart, and see what your heart is wanting you to share today. All through this week, for some reason, what's been popping up in my mind is being seen, dare to be seen. That just keeps coming to my mind. And it's something that I have struggled with all of my life, because I've come through a background that was very critical. I was coming through a background that's loving family, but also in a way that I was expected to perform in certain ways, to look a certain way, etc. And it wasn't really me. I wasn't really getting to know myself until my late 30s. And I felt like that's when I really woke up and I really entered the world and was really born. I did not know who this person was before then. It was just a combination of what people wanted me to be just to make them happy. But I was ready to be seen. And when I was born, finally, in the end of my 30s, a couple of years ago, I didn't know what to do with myself. It was just like a brand new baby into a new world. It was scary. You had to get to know this whole new environment all over again. You had to get to know yourself and how you work and how you think and even how you move and what you like and what you don't. And I took that for granted because it's always been done for me. So it was a very, very eye-opening experience, probably one of the hardest times of my life, but also one of the most important times of my life that gave me life, no pun intended. Ever since then, I started to discover who I really was, to the point where even my wardrobe, even how I decorated my home, to the type of furniture that I picked, I realized it wasn't me. And I had finally woken up, I'm like, who was this person that picked all of this? it was the most bizarre place to be. But I was finally allowing myself to be seen. And the first step to being seen is to make the time to listen, not, past those critical voices all the way down to the heart, and just trust. That's the scariest part, is to trust, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if what your heart is telling you is something that's going to help you in the long run, or put you down, or make you be judged, or whatever it may be. But again, those are all just the noises, the head trying to get in the way. You just have to jump and trust, because you know deep inside that it's the right thing to do. Because why? It keeps nagging at you, nagging and nagging and nagging until you do something about it. So I'm glad I've had opportunities to listen to my heart, finally have the ears to truly listen. I still am on my journey. Every single day, I dare to be seen first with myself. I dare to see myself. I have to see myself first before others can see me. And I'm trying to be patient about it. It's not because I know all of you, I know a lot of you here that do your own thing to be seen. And I'm so proud of that, because it takes courage, it takes vulnerability, it takes showing up even when you don't want to show up or feel like showing up. But you got to trust it. And to be seen doesn't mean you have to be seen happy all the time or perfect all the time. You need to be seen as you, as a human. If you're having a bad day that day, tell us you're having a bad day. Actually, that's what connects people, is that you're having a bad day just as I'm having a bad day, and we get through it. So dare to be seen. And for all of you today that are dare to be here, either seen through your stories by sharing them today, some of you for the first time, or here dare to be seen through your presence and through your love and kindness, because you're here to support others who are sharing moments of vulnerability and moments that shaped who they are. I applaud you. So I hope you continue to be seen, so others can in turn see themselves. So I have the pleasure, let me invite one more person in. I have the pleasure to introduce Felicia Johnson. Felicia, I've just spoken to a few times, but I know she's been in the rally. I love her content, her work. She's truly inspirational. She's in a bunch of projects and regarding spiritual growth. And you have something that I still need to connect to you on about the awe intuitive life coach and the awe proverbs. You just have this profound ability, in which you mentioned in your bio, but I did see this a few times I've spoken to you, to really ask those intuitive questions and really think differently. There's this warmness in your aura. And I really, really look forward to hearing what you have to say today and getting to know you better, Felicia.
Thank you. Get comfortable. Here's the story. You ready? Here we go. Once upon a time, y'all, there was a supervisor that was working at this trail train. And he was going around asking all these other trains to help this large train that was stuck on the track. Unfortunately, all the person heard was, "No, I'm too busy. I can't help you. No, that's not worth my time. I cannot do that." But sitting off to the side was this small little engine train that was built for the job, and she was eagerly waiting for her next opportunity. But only out of desperation did the supervisor go to her and say, "Hey, okay, are you ready to tackle this job?" She provided no excuses, and she calmly responded, "I think I can." She set herself up in front of that train that was stuck on the track, and she successfully helped that track to move. Now, there were times that she was going fast and going slow, but she was always saying, "I think I can, I think I can, I think I can." When the job was done And she heard no congratulations from her supervisor or congratulations from her colleagues that had refused the job. She congratulated herself by saying, I thought I could. Y'all, that is the story that was written back in the 1900s called The Story of the Engine That It Could. I can make many alignments to my life to that story, but we all can resonate together. So, what I would like for you to do as I read off some of these points for you and sharing is I want you to type, I think I can. Okay. So, here it is. If you're an achiever and often exceed at what you do, but others call you a workaholic and don't understand your drive, type in there, I think I can. You make the highest grade in school, and you're usually more qualified for any job, certifications, type, I think I can. You're constantly thinking ahead and looking for the big next career opportunity. Let me know if you can relate and type, I think I can. More times than you care to admit, you are not seen by leaders because you didn't look like the other trains, or they didn't take the time to get to know you and your skills. Let me know. I think I can. You can self manage your work and perform and often motivate yourself. Let me know if you think you can. As a woman, sometimes you label your self confidence, focus, or frustration as aggression, bossy, or you've been labeled the angry Black woman. Hmm. Let me know by saying, I think I can. Although you're successful, there are times that you feel like a fraud. If you can relate, type, I think I can. You were fast at some point, but you feel yourself slowing down, losing your mojo, or you're completely stopped on your track. Let me know if you can relate by saying, I think I can. What if you just simply need help getting over the mountain that's in front of you? I mean, don't know where to go for that help. I think I can. All right, for those of you that have connected and sharing and thinking I can, thank you so much for sharing. So, as a high achieving career Black woman, I often had to navigate the complexities of the feeling that people have this sense of awe. Awe meaning it's respect, wonder, but yet an intimidating fear at the same time. I was raised in a military family and I witnessed firsthand the emotional intelligence that is needed to be an effective leader. It was always getting that flag up on top of the mountain. I also learned the balance of making sure that the mission is accomplished. You don't have always have time for emotions, so you're not able to really reveal your real self. I learned that moving around and encountering new people all the time, that I understand the importance of seeing and hearing people and meeting them simply where they're at. Although I knew how to control my emotions in the workplace, I also found myself just going through the motions, right? And then finally, I was stopped in my tracks by imposter syndrome. I was overwhelmed from my career to my life as a wife, a mother. How do I do it? Raised my hands up in the air and was like, you are going to have to show me. And that started me on my spiritual journey to learn more about myself, to awaken spiritually, to practice self care, and to embrace the inner honest that was within and embracing that. So now I happily live my life as what I call as a Proverbs 31 conjure woman. I'm a happier wife now today, business owner, mother, and friend. And I simply do that by living smart, which allowed me to ascend to new levels of success. So, what did living smart mean for me? My journey was I had to see myself and awaken to who I am. I had to learn how to master my emotions. I had to ask, believe, and receive in the things that I wanted in life versus the things I didn't want. I had to learn how to relax, relate, and release some things that were no longer serving me. And then from the school of Yoda, I had to learn how to talk wisely. What are the words was I using? It was no longer try, it's do or do not. And so today, as an all intuitive life coach, I do have this ability to ask intuitive questions and provide intuitive feedback that helps other people to go on their journey and ascend to new levels of success. So we started today with the story about I Think I Can. Well, Craig Dorfman wrote a sequel to that book called I Knew You Could. And a quote that says, "There's more about life you'll learn as you go, because figuring things out on your own helps you grow. Just trust in yourself and you'll climb every hill. Say, I think I can. And you know what? You will." I'm Felicia Johnson. Thank you for allowing me to share some of my stories and seeing that you relate to me as well.
Wow, that was beautiful, Felicia. Very, very truly inspiring.
Thank you.
And very, very relatable. Lots of I think I cans, and Melody said, "I know I can." I love that. I love that. I'm going to open it up to anyone that wants to say a comment, or if they could relate to what Felicia was saying.
I love the Yoda in the try. When people say try, it's my biggest pet peeve. It's like, are you gonna try or are you gonna do? What are you gonna, if you're gonna try, I'm not even gonna count.
Yes, Jason, it is one of those words, like if someone say, "Hey, why don't you come over to the party?" I'm like, I'll try to make it. It's just a way of just kind of like, don't get your hopes up too much, because there's this possibility not going to do it. But if you literally look up the definition of trying, it literally says difficult or hard to endure. So if you put that on anything that I'm trying to, get my business up and running. I am trying to lose weight. I am trying to make this happen. You're speaking struggle into that situation. So just remove the try.
Yeah, that word doesn't even hold up on a muscle test. You say try, you'll go weak. You say do my best, you're pushing strong. That's what I love about the difference of those two words.
Indeed, Linda. It's a physical thing as well. It's up here in the mental.
Yeah, it electrically just shuts you down. Try it.
Yeah.
True. So true. Felicia, I have a question. You said you were stuck in imposter syndrome for a long time. How did you get out of it?
Yeah, the Live Smart. Going on that journey of discovering more about who I am, because I really didn't know, because it was just about everyone else. And so once I started my journey to live smart, that's when I discovered more of who I am. I'm not able to change all those people, but who am I? And then that's when it led to me having to master my emotions, because one of the things that you probably wouldn't have saw, or the feeling I had, was angry. And so with the stereotype of the angry Black woman, it was like I would squash that down too. So I was just going through the motions. So I had to learn to ask myself, what are you feeling right now? Are you jealous? Are you frustrated? Just bored? What was it? And so, like I was sharing before, then I had to learn what do you want? Do you really want to be in this job? Do you really want to do this? Do you really want to do that? So then I had to learn how to relax. I was a human doing versus a human being, because I was always striving for that next success, that next opportunity. I was always going until eventually I was stopped on my track. So I had to learn how to relax, breathe, take a break. And then, of course, talking wisely. I wasn't talking wisely. I had disempowering words that were not aligned to what I wanted. And so that was the journey that helped me to get unstuck.
Wow. And I agree, Ipek. Human doing versus human being, that is extremely powerful. Something I can definitely resonate with. Anything else for Felicia?
I just want to slip in here and say, I've noticed it with a friend recently. A lot of these disempowering words are unconscious. And when I brought it to her presence, she's like, I just said that. I said, you did. Mm-hmm. And she's like, wow. And I'm like, and so I'm guilty of that. I know I've been called out in my past around using these self-deprecating or negative connotative words in an unconscious way, until someone's like, you said that. I'm like, ooh, right. So I love that you're just bringing that up, Felicia. That's great. And even the imposter syndrome, I mean, I'm just going to judge that. I think we can all relate to that in some way, shape, or form, and there's the whole fake it till you make it thing, right? It's just like, yeah, I guess, right? To a degree, but if you're not feeling it here, it's hard to really get it out sometimes, you know. So
Yes.
love it.
Well, the statistics show 70% of people will have at least one episode of imposter syndrome during their lifetime, and that's a big number.
Felicia, will you put it in the chat how for us to get a hold on your book, please?
Yes, I will do that for sure. Yes.
Excellent. We have a few questions. Let's see. Melody?
Not a question, just an insight on that imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is pretty much a test of your commitment. And it shows you that your focus is on everyone else. So if you're looking at it as imposter syndrome, who am I to do this? Don't look at they're better than me. Look at it as what's my commitment to do what I want to do, what's in me to do. And everyone's unique. So you don't need to compare yourself to others. And you have your own light to shine. So if you focus on that and you believe when you're feeling imposter syndrome, do I really want to do this? Has nothing to do with them. Do I really want to do this? Am I really going to help other people by doing this? Then you're saying, yes, I have a commitment to what I feel instead of feeling the negativity of imposter syndrome. So go at the pace that is meant for you, feel it, and live it.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks, Melody. And that goes with the whole framework of what I was saying. Like I said, you have to be in touch with your emotions. You have to know what is it that you want, right? If you don't know those things, that imposter syndrome will rule your life for sure. Thank you for sharing that, Melody.
Great. Thank you, Melody. Susan, you had your hand up for a while. Did you have a comment? And then we'll go to David.
Yeah, so I was just going to say I had gotten my NLP certification in, I don't know, a few years ago, and they gave us a list of 30 words that constrict us versus empower us, of which try was one of them. And what we did, things like I should, according to whom, I can, really, I can't. Well, I can not, but maybe I can if you take some of these words apart. And I think to what Brian was saying, what was amazing is we took a week and tried to have conversations not using those words.
Yes.
And it ended up that we could not talk because these words are integrated into our entire way of being. And they really don't allow for empowerment or growth. It was really an interesting exercise.
Yes.
And I need to find that list of 30 words. It's in a box somewhere, but you made me think about it and the fact that I need to really find it.
Yes, bring those back out. And it is a opportunity, like I said, because you can hear it. And when you're aware of it, then you hear it in other people. And then what I love is just like, even when you catch yourself, because like I said, there are times that I'll still say it as well, but then I'll hear it and be like, that's a struggle word. And then just take that pause and say, what is it that you really want to say in this moment? And before, it would be like the fear that someone's going to judge you, like you don't know how to talk, you know what you're saying. I'm like, no, I want to make sure that I am saying empowering things and talking wisely versus just saying words as filler words. So yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, man, we are really imprinted. So it's about re-imprinting and getting on a new neural pathway and weakening the old one. And so like having somebody kind of police your words without doing it negatively, but just picking one that you're changing and not saying the word like, oh, you said camped again, just saying, you said that word again, you know, it's like, did you mean to? Oh yeah, no. And you don't even bring up the word you're getting rid of.
Yeah, it definitely is if you're encouraging some people. So like as a coach, it's not when you say it one time, I will just mention, like if I'm in a session, I'm like, were you aware, did you notice that you said trying like 10 times in the last 5? And like how Brian was saying, like people don't like, did I? I'm like, and then that leads to a whole nother discussion about that. So yes, it's not the word police every time, but just be noticed. You said it quite often, then encouraging them. Yeah.
Let's get to David and then Mandy.
Thank you. Really appreciate everybody firstly, any presentation that starts with Slick Rick is always going to be a winner.
Yes, you got that. Yes, David.
Oh, man, great. So great start to the rally, and I'm looking forward to hearing all the other storytellers. A couple of things came up for myself. So listening to the conversation, about empowerment, what always comes up for me is what you call anchors and sails, and people who want to say things to anchor you, and people who want to uplift you. Um, I think that's really important. It's the story and the narrative you tell yourself. I think that's really important to a certain extent. Sometimes we believe far too much into what others think and what people say, and I suppose that's a huge part of imposter syndrome. And I suppose my closing point for this thing is, I heard another really great saying that was something that was like, don't take criticism from somebody you'd never want advice from. There's a lot of people who are so very good at going into what I call the should police. I've talked about this recently, and I'm hoping by God's grace I'm going to write the article on this, around the should police. You should do this. You should be like this. You should, because I will do this. And you know what that is? That's just people's weakness, because they want you to conform into a mold that's theirs. And there's no point in doing that, like we only do that because some people are scared of what is different to them and don't like something that doesn't conform to their little box. And that's not what this group's about, and that's not what we are as humans are about. We are unique and beautiful in our uniqueness, and that's what makes us special. I'm gonna be quiet now.
Thank you, David. I know that definitely is a word that's probably on Susan's list, but yeah, that should.
I want to add, I put it in the text box so people can see it. I saw this at a talk years ago. Should is shame plus could. And I've been, that's right. I don't have to say any more on that.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Harry, I love how you teach on that, like, I have to or I get to. I get to comes from a place of worthy, of enoughness. I get to enjoy this day. This life is my own. And I really appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you.
Wow, so many nuggets.
Wow, surprise. Thank you.
Let's
Mandy.
Mandy, yes, Mandy.
Yeah, I can't be a therapist and not give some tips. Like, no, I loved what you shared, Felicia. It was so good. And I believe, where did she go? Linda was kind of speaking on this some too, but yeah, our automatic thoughts, those neural pathways that get hardwired from our experiences, and they are just so automatic, and they don't even happen. And it's like, we all have I don't know what roads are out your way, but a highway 28 or a highway 400 of negative thoughts in our mind that they just go down. And that one of the things I encourage my clients to do, that someone else was saying something similar, was learning to be the curious inner scientist of yourself, and you just observe it. And from there, because now what you're doing is you're putting a pause on your subconscious, right? And I encourage people to think of those automatic thoughts as just like neurological junk. It's just junk. And one of my favorite quotes by Aristotle is that the mark of a wise mind or an educated mind is the ability to have a thought and not believe it. And so then from there, it's about that rewiring, right? It's about that noticing what's really true about yourself. A lot of us with imposter syndrome or pessimists think you're being realistic, and negative thoughts don't hold any value at all. There actually literally isn't wiring in our body system for them. And so I'll end with this. One of my cheesy therapy tips is the 3 C's, and I'll write this in the chat, but it's the catch it, check it, change it. And so just observe it, catch it, check the thought, and change it. And every time you do that, you're starting to lay the bricks for, or the road for, a new highway, a new neurological pathway in your mind. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, everyone, for co-creating with me today in this experience. And I just want to say, as I saw one of the chats, yes, Linda, spells, like I said, the conjure. I speak different spells to overcome those words. So that caught my attention. Yeah.
So many nuggets. Gosh, so many nuggets. And we're just at the first storyteller. Thank you, Felicia, for inspiring and all those words from everybody. I would like to introduce our second storyteller, Jason Tracey. Heard lots of wonderful things about you, even some people saying, oh my goodness, my mentor is going to be on there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to hear his story and get to know more of him. So based on what I learned about you, you have this huge passion for small businesses and empower purpose business entrepreneurs to be different in sales and leadership. You're the one that mentioned in the bio that really stood out, that you have this superpower, which is the ability to look through people's head trash to see their own potential. So you're all about unleashing the inner lion, which I love. I imagine that's where you came from, your business name, Roar Consulting, which is awesome. So I can't wait to hear more about it, but also about your story today. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me on. It's, you know, it's so cool coming into a room and not knowing you, and we hadn't met. So I appreciate the platform. I do believe that every one of us has a lion inside waiting to be uncaged. Now, what is that cage for me? You know, so some kids, they are afraid of the imaginary monsters that are under their bed or in their closet. Some kids have very real life monsters. My monster was my 6'2", 250-pound dad, but I called him Randy because that's the only power that I had to really get under his skin and piss him off. I was a kid, right? And so as he was beating my mom, as he was berating my mom, I was the oldest child. And so I would step in because I wanted to be the protector. I wanted to save my mom. My mom was everything to me. And as I'm watching this go down, I would jump in to the battles and I would get my ass kicked as well. And so I took my power in the way that I could, and I'd call him Randy because I knew that it really hurt his feelings. I knew that even though he was this monster, that he took pride in being a dad, and so as I called him by his name over and over again, it was that way that I could take my power back. Now, there were moments in my childhood. There was one particular moment I remember I was going from my room to the bathroom where whatever mood he was in, whatever happened to him and whatever set him off, he grabbed me and he threw me onto a bed and he just started pounding me in the face and beating me up. I took all those beatings, and honestly, to this day, I don't really even remember those. Those weren't something that really impacted me as much as what, you know, they say sticks and stones break your bones, but words will never hurt you. It was the words that were said to me over and over and over again that became my cage later in life. Now, things got really, really bad. And as I was approaching my 12th birthday, my grandpa had passed away, and my grandpa was my hero, and he was a protector. And my dad happened to be afraid of my grandpa. And so as my grandpa got cancer, he got brain cancer. My dad was, in fact, he picked me up from school the day that my grandpa was diagnosed with brain cancer. He picked me up from school and he was so excited. I thought literally, like, this man must be taking us to Disney World. This man must be like, what is he doing that he's so excited about? And as soon as I got in the car and sat down, he said, your grandpa's is a goner. He's as good as dead. And so I had this hero, this protector that I looked up to so much. My grandpa was so charismatic. I've never been to a funeral where there was more people there. I looked up to this man, and I was being told by the man that I hated that he was a goner and that he was going to die. And that's the way that I found out. The words are so much more impactful than any physical abuse that you could possibly take. And I feared everything as a kid. And it's so funny because looking back, I remember my mom always saying, like, why don't you just stop running your mouth? Why do you constantly get in the fight? You're getting more of a beating because you won't stop talking. At the same time, I viewed myself as this weak, powerless, scared little boy. I was so scared that in the first grade, I made myself sick to my stomach every single day because I didn't want to go to school. I refused to go outside for recess every chance I could because there was a kid on the playground that I was afraid of and I didn't want to go out to. I literally had to have my tonsils removed because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And it was all just being debilitated by the fear that I had inside my head. Now, as I was approaching my 12th birthday, and it was Easter Sunday, and my grandma had left the house, and my grandpa had passed away, and so my dad had really went off the rails, and he was really, it was the biggest beating I'd ever seen him give my mom, and my mom was trying to call the police, and he had the phone, the corded phone, was beating her with the phone, and blood was flying everywhere, and I was almost 12, and so I'm jumping in, and we both really got a beating that day, and it was a few days later, my mom was asking me, what do you want for your birthday? What do you want to do? What kind of party do you want to have? You know, what do you want to do? And I said, Mom, I don't want a party. Mom, I don't want a gift. If you can find a way to get out of here, if you can find a way to get this, me and my brother and her, if you can find a way to get us out of here and move on, because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm 12 and this has happened. This is getting worse. And where are we going to be if we don't get out of this house? And my mom did. My mom, when he left for work one day, had my uncles come over and packed up the house and got us out of the house. And that was the first really big lesson for me. My mom didn't have a job. We were on welfare. I know that she had to be scared about, how do I raise 2 kids on my own with no money, no education? How does that happen? And so for me, that was just a really big transition in my life. And it was someone that I got to look up to. And to this day, I look at, oftentimes we say, we're not ready to make a leap. We're not ready to make a move. We're not ready, we're not ready for that job promotion, or we might be in an abusive relationship, but we can't leave because the circumstances aren't right. Take that step. Take that step. It will work out. And it may be hard. It may be difficult. You may fall on your face, but the lessons that you pick up from that are just unbelievable. And so our life really, really started to change. But it's so crazy how those words came back and really caged my lion. See, I had this voice in my head, as I'm sure we all do, that told me there was more to life than this. It told me there was more to life than being on welfare and living in an apartment. I lived in an apartment up until I was like 20 years old. So I only knew that lifestyle. I knew there was more. In my head, I started creating these fantasies, and oftentimes where I would just kind of drift away in my fantasy world, because in my fantasy world, I was a charismatic leader. I was inspirational. I was helping change people's lives. I was a coach, and I was thinking I was going to be an athletic coach, but I was a coach, and I was doing some monumental things. Or sometimes I had those dreams that all kids have, where I was a rock star or a famous athlete, or not because I was musically inclined whatsoever, but I had this dream of performing and getting on stage and really getting a crowd going. But we talk about imposter syndrome, we talk about the words, and those words of, you're not going to be shit, you're dumb, you're a loser. I self-sabotaged. I got bad grades all through school because I felt like that's me. And even the people that were around me that loved me, I could see how they looked at me and they thought I was going to be a loser. I had heard my uncles talking about me one time, and talking about, because I had this father and because this is the way things were going, that I was just going to grow up and be this loser. And it stuck in my head. Is this going to be me? Am I going to be this loser? Am I going to repeat everything that my dad did? A couple things, several things happened, and we talk about a TV show and just something really stupid. One day I was watching Seinfeld, and in George Costanza, if nobody's watched Seinfeld before, George Costanza is this lovable loser, and he had this amazing discovery in this one episode where he was like, wait a minute, what if I do everything opposite to what my natural reactions are? What if I do everything opposite? And I had this fantasy world that I was living in. I'm like, what if I started doing things opposite of what I fear? If I have fear to do that, what if I just do it? What would happen? And so that was a little bit of a shift. The big shift, and I told myself that I would never see my dad again unless he died, and then I would go to his funeral to make sure that he was actually dead. And when I was 23 years old and he committed suicide, I went to his funeral to make sure that he was actually dead. And in my fantasy world, I was going to be the person in our family that was going to reverse our family circumstances. I was never going to be standing in a welfare line. I was going to get out of, I wasn't going to live in an apartment. I was going to create a lifestyle for my family and for my kids that they would never know the pain that I had to go through. They'd never know the experiences that I had to go through. So as I got home after standing in the welfare line, applying for aid, my power was off. I had an eviction notice on my door. I was sitting and really sorting through my life and what am I going to do? And I started really thinking about, wow, I'm such a victim right now. I'm blaming everything on someone that's dead. even if he had this desire to hurt me, or even if I had this desire to hurt him, or if I had this desire to say all these angry things or go and physically harm him, he's dead. Nothing even matters. So I'm sitting here and I'm constantly, when anything bad happens, I'm like, it's because I was raised a certain way. It's because I had these circumstances, because my dad said this about me. And I'm sitting and having a pity party for myself constantly and not changing my path, not listening to that lion inside that I should go and do these things. And I started realizing, oh my God, I'm not a victim. He's a victim, in fact. He was somebody that literally had two amazing sons that he could have been in their lives and got to know them. And instead, he literally went into a garage, closed the door, and killed himself, thinking that he had nobody around him. And I started really thinking about what was the accumulation of that. I'm lucky enough because I got to really put my thoughts into it and realize that I'm not a victim. I got to have a son and not be abusive, right? I got to give my son a life that I didn't have as a father. In fact, when I found out I was having my son, it was one of the happiest days of my life because I told my brother, like, I get to do things differently. I get to play ball with my son. I get to go do these things and set good examples. I get to set a lifestyle again that I didn't have. And yet there's my dad that literally had nobody, died alone. He's the victim. He didn't think that he could change his circumstances. I am alive and I still have the power to change my life. And so I did. In that moment, these stories of evictions and my power being off and having my car repossessed and my dad being abusive, I didn't tell these stories to anybody. That was so ashamed and so embarrassed for these stories up until this point. And then I started sharing my story because I had healed from it. I'd realized that I'm not the victim, that my dad's the victim. And I started sharing these stories and it changed the way people looked at me, but not the way I thought. People started looking at me with respect. See, at this point in time, I'd grown my career to be a sales director for an organization. I'd reversed my family circumstances. I'd bought a house. I'd had cars. I had these things. I had these accomplishments. I had an amazing son. I have an amazing wife. I put together my life the way that I wanted to. And I'm the sales director, and I couldn't figure out, why am I having success? What am I doing that's so successful? Well, as I'm leading salespeople, and I don't know if anybody knows, but a lot of salespeople have dysfunctional lives. I think a lot of people have dysfunctional lives, but people in sales in general, from what I've witnessed, have had really deep scars. And especially when you look at, you're making all commission, a lot of times people are struggling for money. And so people would come to me and they'd bring me their inner vulnerabilities. And they'd sit and talk to me, and I would help them and empower them to move forward. And people would say all the time, I feel like you understand. They didn't look at me and realize my story. I would tell them my story, and they'd realize that they had hope. That if I can make it, and I can be in this position, in this role, in this place in life where they never knew that this was my background story and this is where I came from, that why couldn't they do it too? And so I started inspiring people with my story, and it was like, wow. I was able to uncage my lion and uncage my beast by just embracing that vulnerability, things that I would have never told anybody. Now, as I'm sharing that, it's helping empower and change people's life. And so my encouragement to everybody is, if there's something holding you back, if there's a story that you're ashamed of, there's something that you're wondering what makes you different, it's that story. If you've lived it, if you've been through it and you're here to tell us about it, share it with as many people as possible, because somebody else is going through that same exact situation, and your story can inspire them. And I hope that my story has inspired you all today.
Holy
Thank
cow,
you.
Jason. Wow.
Yeah.
That was powerful, man. Thank you for
Mhm.
that. Thank you for that.
Very
I can't say
powerful.
anything else, but just thank you.
Very powerful. You are a gem of a person, Jason. So honored to have you here. And look at you. You've come such a long way. And that is a true inspiration. I've gotten so many nuggets from you. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. And you know, I was on a podcast a month ago, and I was telling my story, and this gentleman said, "I'm so sorry that happened to you." And I'm at this point in my life where I'm so thankful that happened to me. I wouldn't be here sharing my story with you. I wouldn't have been on that podcast. I wouldn't be the coach that I am if that stuff didn't happen to me. So I'm so thankful that I lived that story, because now it's a story now, and it happened to me. And obviously the emotions are still there, because they come out every time I tell this story. But I'm so thankful I had that life, because now I'm here, and now I know the difference of how I'm living now.
Jason, I've
Absolutely.
got a comment to make. Thank you for sharing your personal story. You touch a chord with me, of course, as you can tell from my background. I'm military, Vietnam veteran, and Vietnam veterans, such as myself, have often a lot of flashbacks. And your story certainly gave me a big flashback, and I share some similarities with you. Fortunately for me, my father wasn't that abusive in that regard, but he was a true alcoholic. And I have a question for you. In my case, I'm at the position in reflecting on my father and what he put us through. And I too tried to get my mother to leave. But being a true Catholic that my mother was, she was in for life, you know. And so we just dealt with a struggle. As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why I joined the Navy, is to get away from that environment I was in. But I need to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Have you ever sat and just reflected on your past and your father? Have you ever thanked him in terms of helping you be where you are today? Because in my case, I thank my father often for helping me become the person that I am. Because of what I experienced through life with him and his alcoholism, I'm not an alcoholic. I certainly enjoy a social drink, but it's my choice. You know, I once read Dr. Wayne Dyer, Your Erroneous Zones. And boy, that hit me right between the eyes. You know, it's our choice. It's our choice. And you made the choice yourself, which may have taken some time to get there, but you made the choice. And you could have become an abusive husband, or neglectful dad as well, but you chose otherwise. So our lives are built around choices, and I commend you for the choices you've made. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Raul, and thank you for sharing your story. And I once heard that people that do bad things or make mistakes, they say it's because of how I was raised. And I also hear that people that change their lives and make transformations and do great things say it's because it's how I was raised. And so it all depends on how you look at it. And so awesome to you for being able to look at it and not be an alcoholic and lead your life the way that you have because of the experiences that you went through. To answer your question, yes, absolutely. I have not only thanked him, but I've spoken out loud that I forgive you. I've forgiven him, because I don't know where he was trapped in his head. Obviously, he didn't see any way out except for in a casket. He didn't see any way out except for death. And so I feel really bad for him, even though the things that he put me through. And so I've literally spoken out loud, I forgive you. And that was such a weight off my shoulder. Now, in opposite, my brother has held on And I just see how very bitter he is. And so to be able to release that out in the world and forgive him, I could just feel the joy and the energy that I had inside me that was just a different shift.
Absolutely, Jason. That's awesome. I love, Raul, that you brought that up, and Jason, that you did the work, because I can relate in my own realm with that. And I want to share something that's on point with this, and then I'll bounce off. But it's, of all people, Will Smith said this: it's not your fault something happens to you, but it's your responsibility to do something about it. And I love how clean that is, right? It's, you know, yes, we have our stuff, whatever you want to call it, you know, abuse, trauma, neglect, whatever. We can be the victim to that, like you said, or we can take responsibility and clean that up and become empowered by that. So you're a shining example of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, that was powerful. Any other insights, last comments for Jason? Raul, thank you so much for sharing. Great to see you as well. And that quote
I
was
just
amazing.
want to thank Jason. That was so powerful. Thank you, Jason.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's amazing. And it just goes to show how we really can take control of our life and turn it around and make it something very positive. You know, it's up to us. It's up to us.
We think about stigmas and statistics. I shouldn't be where I'm at today, you know,
right?
On welfare, single mom, abusive dad. Like, I had a baby with my wife that I've been with now for 14 years, but we found out we were having a baby in our first 2 months of our relationship. I'm beating all the odds.
Yeah. My guess is you're living your soul's journey. That would be my guess. Do you know what I mean? That you were put here to do this. And also, Raul, I just was saying, but you're mentioning, have you ever thanked him? It reminds me of the Hogo Pogo Ono. Am I saying that correctly?
Oh, Ho'oponopono.
Thank you.
I'm like, we have an expert on the call, so.
Oh, do we? Okay. Because I use that often with people that I've had like real challenges with. You know, I love you. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Thank you. What am I missing?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
And I love you.
And I love you. And it is so powerful. It is so powerful. But anyway, I just wanted to say thank you, Jason.
Absolutely.
I will add this, Jason. Some of the most powerful leaders and transformational people that I've met in my life in the years that I've been doing leadership work and transformational body work have had pretty dark pasts, right? Because they've done the work to come out of it, and they're unstoppable after that. So yeah.
How about putting in the work?
Thank you so much, Jason. Truly, truly inspiring. An honor to have had you tell your story. We are going to move on to Mandy. Mandy, as you saw, she is a therapist. He very much has a passion to fight stigma around mental health, because I really relate to that, Mandy, because I myself have thrived in anxiety. We have to watch our words. Thrived in anxiety for all my life, and it's made me who I am. Mandy, I love your stance on positive psychology and neuroscience fascinates me. And I know we barely spoke yesterday and get to know each other, but I know, like everyone else, you are human. You've been through challenges and you feel like you've been trying to be tested as you try to live your life and with success. And you've passed through all those tests and ignored them and pushed through. And I'm proud of you for that. And I can't wait to hear your story.
Thanks for having me on, Andrea. It's been so inspiring and uplifting just hearing these stories already. And it's a good way to start the Saturday for sure. So yeah, I didn't have anything planned to say, so I'm going to just say some things and tell you a little bit about my story. And part of it is, you know, I do a lot of trauma work in my practice, and I'm a certified EMDR clinician, if any of you know what that is. And so, you know, part of what we've all been talking about, you know, with imposter syndrome or with our own thoughts and things like that, you know, when you go even deeper, it always goes back to something that you're believing about yourself. even that, not even realizing that you're in a victim mentality or whatever it may be. And I can see how in my story and in my life, until I started doing the work about what I'm believing about myself because of my experiences, that's when I really began to have the courage to make shifts. And so I would say my story even began with something really, a simple negative experience that planted this little seed of self-doubt that never went, I went through life without it healed. And then that became this big, big barrier for me. So I will, and this is one of the stories I share with my clients. It's a pretty, like if you hear it, you think about it, it's pretty benign, but I think it sets the stage for the rest of it. I'll never forget in 3rd grade, I was new to Georgia. My family had just moved down from Baltimore, and so it was kind of starting over, didn't have many friends. I was, elementary, middle school, we all look weird, and it's those awkward years and things like that. And a lanky kid, didn't have braces. I was born with some missing teeth. I had, misprescribed glasses, all this stuff. And I had like 2 friends at the time. And I remember becoming very aware of how much I was being left out. And one day at recess, I said to my one friend, "How come you hang out with her more than me?" And without missing a beat, she said, "Because she's prettier than you." And then they walked off, and I just remember crying, like they were my only friends. And I'm such an internalizer. Back home, I have wonderful parents, 2 older brothers, but my oldest brother, he was quite the rebellious one. He is a recovering alcoholic and addict and all of that. And a lot of that was starting those younger years. And so for me, anything to stay under the radar, anything did not cause trouble. I'd rather just keep all my problems to myself because I didn't want to cause any more issues at home. And from that experience, I formed the belief that one, to be liked, I have to look a certain way. I'm not good enough, and that I'm not important. And so from there, it grew. Anytime I had a negative social interaction or something, because, our mind can't hold 2 conflicting beliefs in our head. So, and as kids, we have to confirm the beliefs that are true. And so it's like, oh, that must have happened because it's something about me not being good enough, not being important, not being liked, whatever it may be. So this is when a lot of my body image, self-esteem behavior started. And when I'd say my people-pleasing behavior started, because if I could do whatever else everyone wanted, or make sure that I, made them happy, then maybe I would be enough, and maybe I would be like, and it's not that conscious when you're that younger. You just find yourself doing these things, right? So flash forward to, I got married when I was 23, and he was very charming. I knew him for a couple of years. We had similar, faith backgrounds and all of this stuff. And like I had met the one, right? And I grew up in a very, religious home where like there's like that one person for you, like so all these things that you get inundated with growing up. And so like he was my forever person, and proposed, and we got married. And I would say about 6 months to a year after we got married, it's like things progressively started going downhill, and the facade came off. And me being the people pleaser I am, is anything to be compliant, anything to do what he wanted, to make him happy. He was suffering a lot from some anxiety and depression, and those struggles overlooked what the real issue was, that I didn't find out till at the end of our marriage, when he actually got a formal diagnosis that he met all the criteria for a narcissistic personality disorder. And I remember all of the verbal abuse and the emotional abuse, and it just, for so long in my own work, I was like, how did I not see this? How did I not see the signs? And I can't trust my judgment and all these things. And, you know, with narcissists, they present a certain way, and over time, they can't maintain that good behavior. And so it just, the veneer comes off, so to speak. They decompose over time. But throughout all of that, I just remember, you know, pleading with him, like, what can I do to make you happy? Like, why am I not good enough, you know? And because you think, like, no matter how, you know, shitty of a day I had, at least I had him to come home to, right? Like, but why wasn't I enough for him with that? And, you know, with that sort of dual diagnosis that he had, it was hard to see what was what. And as a therapist, you know, I could see the depression there. I could see the anxiety, the narcissism. That was a beast I did not know that was going on. And the belittling and the, you know, he was the victim to everything and his bad deal. And I was constantly the one who had to bear witness to that. And just couldn't understand why I wasn't enough. And so I'm now living out that same belief that I've carried with me for so long, stuck in that, because that never got any healing. And, you know, I remember so often just crying myself to sleep so many nights. And, you know, and with all of the gaslighting and manipulating, there's so much of that going on. I felt like I was the crazy one all the time. What was it that I was doing wrong? And as I say this, I don't say this to minimize anyone who's been through physical abuse, because this was very much turning into that if I hadn't left. But I just remember, because of my upbringing, how you don't get divorced. I grew up in that culture, in that spiritual culture, faith or religious culture. I would pray, like, just let him hit me, then I'll have a reason to leave. And in my mind, that was my only way out, is if he crossed that line. Otherwise, I was trapped. I had to stay. And as things, you know, were progressively getting worse, and, you know, because I needed to have it all together. This was as I was a new therapist too. So all the shame I felt around that, as well as, like, oh shit, like, I don't have my shit together and I'm helping other people, you know, and all of this stuff. And so I pleaded with him to get help. And there was a lot of secrecy going on. Like, he was using some illegal drugs and I didn't know about it, and all these things. And as I, you know, got my own help and my own therapy, it's like the veil started to come off and my power started to come back. And I remember in one of my attempts to make him happy, I had my friend come over, because in the basement, I hated the basement. That's where it was his man cave. That's where he would stay. That's where, you know, he did whatever and would check out. And the color of the walls when we moved in there were purple. It was the purple house. We had to redo a lot of it. And he always hated the color of it. So I had my colleague and my friend, who I ended up living with after, we wrote, one day when he was at work, we wrote all over the walls, just all these positive affirmations, these words, different like verses, different, you know, scriptures, like whatever it was, and then painted over it blue. So he didn't know that was there, but my hope was that it would just create an environment and an energy there. And I will never forget the first time I stood up to him, which he didn't care that I had painted the walls. But the first time I remember standing up to him, I don't remember what it was about. He would threaten suicide a lot. If I left, he would threaten that he would hurt himself, all these things. And I don't have a lot of memory of what all the fights were about, but I remember coming down to the basement. He was going off about something, and I finally said, I've had enough. And I found my voice and I stood up for him. Right before that moment, it's like I could see all those words come through the paint. in my mind, not knowing that those words were going to be for me and not for him. And from that, I found my voice. And that was one of my first moments that I decided that I no longer need to be, I've got to stop betraying myself. And I started to get my power back. And from there, I reached out to my family, tried to get him help, all this stuff. It got a lot worse before it got better. When I chose to not come home for a few days because I needed some space, he came looking for me at my office and I wasn't there. And he drove his truck into some trees at my office to total his car in attempts to kill himself, but that wasn't really it. It was him throwing a tantrum to try to intimidate me. And anyway, long story short, there's so many more details I could go in about that, but I left for the first time he began getting help. I spent a period of time away, moved back in for a little bit, still feeling like, man, do I get divorced? What do I do? And then it was like the reality that he had a personality disorder really sunk in, because that part of him, when I moved back home, it just went back to the way things used to be. And I remember one morning, I knew he had been lying to me about some things. And I went into investigator mode, and I searched all through the basement. I was like, I know he has drugs down here, and I know he's lying about this and this. And sure enough, I found all of it. That morning I had kickboxing, and he was in the shower. I grabbed my things. I grabbed my kickboxing gear. I went to class, beat the shit out of some bags. And then I went to my friend Rhonda's and said what was going on, called my therapist, and didn't realize then, but that was the last and final time that I left. And my journey since then has been a journey of trying to find my voice and not betraying myself. I was recently engaged as of a few months ago, and I ended up calling off that engagement. And I realized that just because something's not abusive doesn't mean it's good. And part of my responsibility in breaking my own patterns is me not being the victim to my situation, and me learning to have a voice. Because the more I don't speak up about things, the more I don't honor myself, the more I don't listen to my intuition, is me giving my power away. And and I play a part in the failure of that relationship as well, and that one's still a little too fresh for me to go into the details about. But I was on a podcast, and I'll kind of end with this. I was on a podcast not too long ago, or a live, and one of my friends who was running the live, there's two other of us on there, and he was like, well, let's go to the therapist, and how do you do self-care? And I remember just wanting to give the most true answer. And it was the first week I had left my fiance. This was just a few months ago, and just really feeling the raw emotion in it. And, I was like, I could give some sort of cliche answer of eat better and run and do all these things that are just like, I said, but I don't want to give that answer. For me, self-care is those little moments of not betraying yourself anymore. It's saying no to something. It's going on that walk instead of taking that meetings call. It's listening to yourself in all the small and all the big ways, so that you learn to actually get to know who you are. I lost so much of my identity in trying to please other people and trying to be enough for other people, that caused me to play a part of the dysfunction of these relationships. Not the abusive parts of it. That wasn't my fault or my responsibility, but my allowing it to happen was a way I let myself become a victim to that. And so now I have to work really hard at keeping my people-pleasing tendencies in check. I always tell my clients, I'm a people pleaser in recovery. It's who I am. And so my encouragement to all of you is just really going inward and having the stance of, I'm not going to betray myself anymore. Thanks for letting me share my story.
Mandy, you had no idea what you were going to say. That's what you said. And you just let your heart do the talking. And that was truly, truly amazing and powerful. And just wow.
Thank you.
Sometimes you don't know why certain people come into your life. Like I mentioned, I don't know a lot of you that are speaking today, but I know that I was meant to hear what you were saying today. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anything else from Mandy before we move on? Deepak.
Mandy, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It was really amazing. Not
Good
that
to see you again, Deepak.
yeah, not that Jason and Felicia's stories weren't amazing, but yours resonated with me at so many levels, because I went through a abusive relationship with my first husband, and I have been there. I could feel every word you uttered in my heart, because I went through the almost same thing. So I feel you, and I'm so happy that both you and I are where we are today, right now, especially now that you even decided to end a relationship of engagement.
Yeah.
I congratulate you for making that decision and putting yourself first. So there's the person who's right for you out there somewhere, and they will find you. And until then, don't give up. Don't let your guard down and go back to your people pleasing, so that just to make yourself look like, yes, okay, she has a partner now. You don't have to have a partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Until the one who's really right for you.
This is my boyfriend right now.
Oh, that's the cutest boyfriend.
We do everything together.
Oh,
thank you,
so
Peck. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Brad, you have your hand, then Jenny.
Yes.
Hey,
Mandy,
Brad.
the one thing that how are you? I tell you something right there. Oh gosh, chills. You do have the one person in your life right now. Look at her in the mirror.
Myself.
I do mirror work every day. My friend Mariah Eddington, just love her. She is so instrumental. She actually started me on that journey by me looking in the mirror and telling myself, I love you, Brad.
Yeah.
And it's something that I do every day. And you do have that. And that's you. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, that, recognizing that you value you enough in order to make the decision to say no. And that's okay.
That's
Proud
so
of you.
powerful. Thank you. No, thank you for that. I have written down, I'm enough and I'm proud of you. And I just look at that all the time. And if y'all haven't read it, one of my favorite books, it's by Brene Brown, called Braving the Wilderness. And it's all about learning to belong to yourself first. Yeah. Thank you, Brad. Jenny?
Yeah, thank you. Mandy, we've been working together some, and this is the first time that I hear your story. And if you look in the chat, it's really resonating with me. I'm so glad that you were able to flip it, like all of that compassion and love and understanding that you had for him, you are equally worthy of. And when it comes to being a professional and going through an experience like this, it so resonates for me. And I just wanted to share with you that the fact that you are willing to see how you, as well as all of us, are a work in progress, it just makes my trust for you deepen so much more. We can have knowledge, we can know facts, but the fact that you have that sense of understanding is just making me respect you greatly. So just wanted to say it.
Thank you, my friend.
Sunny, thank you, everybody. Let's do one more and Melody, and then we'll move on.
When we sit in the middle of a struggle like that, a trauma like that, we are able to relate to others and show them the light a lot better because we know how they feel. We've been there. And that's how support groups are started. They're started because they know how it feels and they can share insight that others don't have. So it's important to have those experiences to help others. So you are a shining light. Thank you for sharing your story. And I could relate to it.
Thank you, Melody. Thank you so much. Yeah, in my own shame struggle that I've been fortunate to have some really good therapists myself. You know, the resounding feedback has been, and I've really had to embrace, and I am more than ever, but is that because shame makes me feel like this doesn't make me the expert, that I should have it all together. And the reality is, and my encouragement from my support people is that it makes me more of the expert. And that, you know, the more I'm willing to own my story, the more my clients will be helped and feel that too. So thanks for that affirmation, Melody. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Mandy,
I'll just say this, Mandy, just to cap with what you just said is, as an analogy, if I'm an alcoholic looking for recovery, I'm not going to talk to a sober person who's never had a drink in their life to help me figure out that path. Right. So, yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
True. Thank you so much, Mandy. Truly, truly admire you and applaud you. With that, perfect segue to Brian. We still have 3 storytellers. These have been so intense and profound, and wow, we could talk on every person for a long time, but I do want to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. So Brian, also, I have never met Brian, but based on the little interaction we've had so far, I can tell that he has this inspiring presence. He has this, gosh, something that stood out in his bio is he's living and traveling in a bus that he built on his own, thus the background, which is so cool. I can't wait to hear more about that. And his passion is working remotely with people so they become more empowered. He's dynamic, transformational, no doubt, and based on what I'm seeing so far, and you're always reinventing yourself. I'd love to hear more about that, Brian, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I thought I was on mute. Anyway, so my story is going to be a different sort of path, personal stories. But anyway, I want to start it with, since I can't do a screen share, this gentleman here, where are we at? This gentleman here, if you can see that. This was an uncle of mine. He was my mom's only brother. And as you can kind of tell from the image, he was born with a severe case of cerebral palsy, and never developed mentally past the age of 6. And so he had a child mind, literally. Was a mentor. Basically, as a kid, I spent a lot of time with him playing video games, watching baseball, just doing kids stuff, right? And never really realized the impact that he had with me, because that was just normal, right? We normalize our childhood because that's just what it is. And I didn't realize how impactful he was into my life. And I didn't realize how much of a space in my heart I have for people of developmentally disabled, platform of who they are, whatever, or just special needs people in general. One particular time, I was 22-ish, thereabout, living in Portland, Oregon, and I got on the MAX train, light rail transit there in Portland, and this gentleman with his friend or helper, whoever he was, came on the MAX train in his wheelchair, electronic wheelchair, and he was of a similar population, so developmentally disabled, maybe mentally handicapped, I'm not sure. What I witnessed was like oil and water, everyone just moved away from him. Not to like give him space to get on the train, but before, and this is before I sort of like spiritually woke up and everything, but I just sort of intuited that moment that people had fear and they backed away out of fear because they didn't know how to interact with this sort of person. And most people would rather run away in fear than try to like understand the situation. I just naturally walked up to him and I looked at his wheelchair, and I'll never forget this interaction. He had like stickers of flames on the car, like, you know, like hot rods have like flames on the side of cars. And I was like, hey man, how fast does this thing go? And he was just like, he just lit up because he was seen, right? Andrea, you mentioned this at the beginning. He was seen. How many times do you think people of that ilk are ignored because people fear them? They don't understand them. They're scared of them. And like you said, also Mandy, Brene Brown, you can't hate someone up close. You know, I was actually reading that book recently, right? You can't hate someone up close. Bring them in, right? And so for me, I just moved in and I loved this man. I loved on him. And, you know, granted, it was maybe just a 5-10 minute conversation until the next stop, but we just like vibed and I watched him just glow and become this beautiful human because they are such beautiful humans. And a lot of times they have such a story to share or just a presence. And I'll say, when my uncle, his name was Ron, when he did pass away in 2011, my brother at his funeral said one thing I really valued about Ron was his childlike approach to world, meaning like give him a baseball game, a bar of chocolate and a coloring book and dude was happy, right? He didn't need anything else. And it's like, what kind of a world would we live in if we had such a simple way of seeing in our needs, right? And I'll never forget that story. And it's a short and simple story, but I'll share one more of similar and how it impacted me. Future forward, a few years ago, part of my journey is I've been a professional full-time therapeutic body worker massage therapist for about 10 years. And at the time I was living in the Denver metro area, actually Golden for those of you know, but I was working at this facility in Metro Denver that helped habilitate quadriplegic and paraplegic patients. There was massage therapists, acupuncturists, chiropractors, and personal trainers to help habilitate people. Well, one of my clients was a full quadriplegic man. His name was Willie, and all he could really move is his head. And so there was a cup in his wheelchair, and to move forward, side, back, and he had to like move this cup with his chin. That's all. He had these claw hands, which didn't do much. And he easily 250 pounds, literally of dead weight because he's a quadriplegic. How we would get him out of his chair onto the massage table for me to do work with him was one of the trainers would come in, grab him under the arms, I'd grab his feet and we'd transfer him to the table and then back at the end of the session. Well, one of these sessions, no trainers were available. They were all busy for various reasons and they couldn't help me out. And Willie's laying there on his back saying, Brian, you can get me off the table. And I'm like, dude, I'm like, Willie, you're crazy. Like, there's no way. And there's no way. And he goes, Brian, at one point I had a home aide, a woman, female, 90 pounds, soaking wet, who could get me on and off, in and out of my chair by herself. And he's like, if she could do it, you can do it. Brian, here's these words. I believe in you. I believe in you, Brian. You can do this. And to this day, those 3 words, I believe in whatever, for how many are some of the most powerful words. And I was reminded of it this weekend where someone told me that exact same thing, bringing this story back up. And I'm like, really? Like, I don't know. I'm like, he's like, look, do you trust me, Brian? And I said, yes. He goes, then listen. You have to listen. So step by step, he guided me on how to get him off the table into his chair. And I did it. And after I did it, I was just like, and he looked at me and goes, Brian, I am so proud of you. I knew you could do it. And I'm like practically in tears, being like losing my stuff. I'm like, wow. I'm like, what if I dropped him? And I mean, just going through the story, the fear stories, right? Even after I've already accomplished this thing. And, you know, he believed in me. I didn't believe in me. He believed in me, right? And how many times, I mean, just by like a heart on the thing, right? Like how many times have you done something and after you did it, people are like, I believed in you. And like, I didn't believe in me, but it took someone else believing in us to achieve this thing, right? And of course, as the funny story goes, it happened a few other times, right? Where it came up in subsequent weeks where it's like, there was no trainers available. It was like, Brian, you can do it. I'm like, no, I can't. He goes, yes, you can. You've already done it. You can do it again. And I didn't believe that I could do it again, even though I know I have already done it once, right? Again, how many times in life do we do that, where we accomplish the most fearful thing and are afraid to do it again, even though we have the data in our own heads, right? I can't, yes, you can. You can do it, right? And so for me, I share this with you. You know, a little bit of a plug. I was on Jason's podcast a month ago. I don't know, whenever he posted it, right? It was in the summertime, but whenever you posted that, Jason, were you going to say something? Okay. Anyway, regardless, we are always making an impact in the world, positive or negative, in every moment. And those who are teachers will understand that they don't realize the impact of the change that they are making in this world. Walking down the street, being who you are, someone will see you and judge you to be, oh my God, that's inspiring, or they're going to belittle you. There's nothing we can do about this. But if you can live your best moment forward, or hell, even I think one of Jason's podcasts recently, a guy was saying how he went off on a rant on one of his Facebook videos. And that rant inspired people to do great things. He's like, I was just angry and I was just venting. I wasn't trying to inspire anyone, and I did, you know. And so we're always making an impact in the world. And in this particular case, like me with that gentleman on the train in Portland, or with my client Willie, you know, inspiring me to do things that I didn't think that I could do. He believed in me, right? And yeah, I'll say this, you're mentioning the permission thing, Jenny. Going back to Brene Brown, and I'll stop here just in lieu of time so we can move this forward, is Brene Brown, and I share this, and I think I shared it a lot, is Brene Brown talks about permission. So I'm just going to say it here. I give you permission to give yourself permission to do whatever it is you know that you need to do, because you know you need to do it. Yes, permission slips, Mandy, yes. And Brene Brown did this, right? And if anyone knows this story, I'll just share it for those who don't know it. But Brene Brown, in her book, was having an event, and she's like, oh, she literally wrote herself a permission slip. And she's like, this is just silly, but she did it, but it empowered her to do that thing. And I'm just forwarding that because that's such an empowering story, right? It's such an empowering story of, you know, like I mentioned, it's like we went from being kids who needed permission to do things to adults who need permission to do things. And I'm just going to share a joke. How many meetings have y'all been in where someone says, can I go to the bathroom? It's just like, go, right? You're an adult, go take care of yourself. You don't need to announce to the world that you have to go do something. Just go do it. Be professional, be an adult, right? And so I'm kind of just changing the tenor of this thing by, you know, I'm kind of a levity, and Jason called me a combination of, what was it? Yoda and Chris Farley, I think it was, right? And so it's just like, I don't know, like I love, I too have had some dark corners in my world. And what I realize is that the more that I can find humor in my own world, the happier of a person that I am, and that just glows outward. So that's it for now. I could talk for hours and hours, but I'm not going to. And so thank you all for listening and just smiling along with me for a few minutes. So
Brian, you are awesome. You're really awesome. You're very dynamic, and I could listen to you forever. Thank you so much. Such amazing nuggets there. And any words for Brian? I saw lots of smiles.
Bueller, anyone? Bueller?
Susan?
You're the man with the real cool van.
I live in a van. Hey, check this out, everyone. Literally, I'm living in a van, in a bus, technically, and I'm parked at the Tennessee River right now. So if there's not enough humor in that for you, then I don't know what is, but just let that be part of the reality.
You're just over the mountain from us. Here in our Nashville.
Nice.
So you're living my dream. I want to live in a van and see the world, see the North America. It's kind of the dream. I love the idea of permission and giving ourselves permission to be everything we can be and strive, and even permission to have more laughter, more life, more friends, more money. Like, how do we just give ourselves permission to even have more and more and more instead of holding ourselves back? I think that was really great.
Yeah. Well, I'll just touch on that. And I think the answer is this. The word selfishness has been weaponized, especially in the spiritual communities, especially in the New Age communities, let alone, traditional religions. So that's a huge stigma that we need to look at and drop.
Yeah, I had a therapist once that did a whole class on being selfish is okay, because then if you're in touch with what you need and want, you can honestly come to the table and negotiate if everybody does that, versus mind reading and assuming and all this, the rat holes we all go down.
Yep.
That's a great point. Let's go with David and then we'll go to our next speaker. David? Do you have your hand up, David? Did you want to speak?
Or not? That's fine.
Or not? Oh, there he is.
Sorry, I'm muting myself. Technical problems. Just great, enjoying this conversation as always. Really enjoyed this conversation. Really high energy. What was resonating for myself was you were talking a lot around belief, trust, and encouragement. I think that really resonated. I think a lot of the times people don't say to each other, I believe in you, I'm proud of you, you've got this. It takes far less energy to say something positive than it does negative. You got to put effort into being mean. And I think a lot of people think, if I say something nice, I'm vulnerable, or I'm this. And it's just great, like you're saying, what Willie's saying, I trust you, I believe you, I encourage you. These things are so important. And that was just such a powerful, high energy conversation. And I thank you for being in this space with us today. And for me, I'm grateful to yourself and all the speakers and storytellers that I'm in the space with you today.
Thank you, David. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Brian. Truly, truly an inspiration. And if you guys haven't already, I've seen some people do it. Please share how people can get a hold of you, or if you have podcasts or anything like that. Even if you're not speaking today as well, please share, because we all need to work together to spread goodness in this world. Let's move on to Susan. Susan, I had the pleasure of speaking for the first time yesterday, and actually our history goes back. We both have a link to the International Facility Management Association, which I worked for 10 years, a couple of years ago. And it's just a small world. I'm so honored to have you here, Susan. Susan has an incredible story of resilience. Not only that, but how awesome is this? She just came back from a 2-week retreat near Cabo, Mexico. And it was a retreat that sounds pretty transformational and amazing. She's at a point where she's going to be doing some pretty cool stuff. She's going through a big shift. Susan, I know your story is all about resilience. You have such courage and strength in your words. I can't wait to know more about you, and I can't wait to hear your story.
So thank you. There's so many, when you're my age, you could really tell a million different stories that have been pivotal moments and somewhat defining. And in talking to Andrew yesterday, I decided to tell the story I've never told before publicly, and to test it out and try it and to kind of let it go and see how it goes. So my friends and my closest friends and network know. So what I'd like you to do is kind of close your eyes and imagine that you're going to bed one night, and interestingly, your feet feel like they have a bunch of sandbags on them. And you're like, it's not enough to really do anything. You're like, okay, this is weird. I'll just ignore it. It'll be better in the morning. And then you wake up. And when you wake up, you feel like your feet are weighed down by lead. Like now, just not a little bit of sand, but they're actually weighed down by lead. And take a moment and think about what's going through your head right now. Like my body's all, you know, in some way or another, it's been there for me. There's a major change going on. And your head is telling your feet to walk, to go up and down stairs, to get into a car, and your legs and your feet aren't responding. And what does that feel like? And what do you do? And what goes through your head? It was scary as could be. This happened to me on December 20th, 2011. I think my husband remembers the date more than I do. And my feet began to feel heavier and heavier. I knew something was wrong. I called the doctor, I called the clinic. My doctor, of course, is on holiday and vacation. I said, I need the smartest, wisest doctor you have, because something is really, really wrong with me and I don't know what it is. And I went in to see him and he tested me for a stroke. And it's getting worse by the moment. And he's like, okay, stand up on this little stool. And I'm like telling my legs to do this and my legs are not moving. And I'm like, okay, he's pushing me up. He's like, okay. So we go through, he tested me for stroke. He tested me for a bunch of other things. He says to me, it came out negative. It'll start dissipating. You'll be okay. The next morning I woke and I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is, but I'll live with it. Next morning I woke up and my face started getting paralyzed. It was really, really stiff. My legs were still heavy. I called him up. They said he's with patients. I said, I'm not getting off the phone until he gets on the phone. This is serious. Something's wrong. He heard that my face was starting to paralyze and he said, get to the hospital as soon as possible. Like, don't wait. You have to get there like right now. And the next 36 hours were excruciating. I became completely paralyzed, starting with my feet and my hands and my head, and it all moved into the center of my body. I was very lucky in that it stopped and I stabilized before I needed a respirator. So I'm sure, I don't know if you guys all know somebody who had Guillain-Barré, but it's a fast onset. Your nervous system starts, your antibodies start attacking your nervous system. It's really rare. It's really random. They have no idea what causes it. And that is what happened to me. And like I said, really lucky that it stopped at my chest. It was a game changer. It took me about 6 months to reclaim my body at all. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to use a fork and spoon again. I had to learn how to move my body in any way possible. The most mortifying to me moment was my facial paralysis, which is not all typical with Guillain-Barré. It happened to me though, where for months and months, I could not talk unless my head was upside down because somehow the paralysis affected my tongue. And I could, if you were hanging on a chair and you put your head over the arm, that's how I had to talk to anybody. And I'm in sales and marketing and I talk for a living. And you know, we were talking today about people that impact what they say to you, you know, and when they say things. And this doctor who was random that I just got, who was amazing, came to visit me at the hospital a lot. And I couldn't cry. My eyes didn't work. I couldn't blink. I couldn't cry. And I was really freaking out and saying, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And he said to me something that I listen to every single day, even today. He said, people don't buy from you because of how your mouth moves. People buy from you because of your expertise, your experience, and most importantly, your heart, your compassion, your empathy, your caring. None of that has changed with you at all. You'll be okay. Why does that matter to me? Because my face never healed. So in the healing process, my face, the rest of my body healed, thank goodness. But my eye nerves control my mouth and my mouth nerves control my eyes. So what that means is that since 2011, every time I say anything, which includes this, I'm in major pain and I have to kick out my words and really work hard to get my words out so that I can communicate with people. And I know that you all can't see it. Like intellectually, I know that even though I literally go through this every day of my life, and that is what I've got to deal with. It's invisible. And you all think it's normal, you know, you meaning the world thinks it's normal. I had to go to a voice therapist, I took voice lessons for a year so that I could learn how to use my voice so that you could understand me. And then I went to a facial paralysis person for months and months so that I could get warm up exercises, which I do almost every day so that I can show up and be present. And again, I talk for a living. So it was a game changer. A couple things that I want to like point out that during this period of time, you know, at the time I did what I was told. I lived my life to be the best Susan Spiers ever. Like what is that journey like? It's not an end game, but it's a journey. And at that time, I didn't really think I had options other than to do my physical therapy. And that was really, really tough to think that physical therapy was going to actually help because it didn't seem it. Secondly, you know, really letting certain people in to help me. My rabbi, my faith is pretty solid and it was challenged at that time. And I'm very spiritual. And my rabbi was really wonderful in that he came every few days to answer the same questions over and over and over again. Why me? Why did God let this happen to me? How am I going to live? How am I going to survive? What am I going to do? And I think the part of it is there was no walking into it. It happened in like a day and a half. Like there was no prep for this experience. And then I talked about the doctor. The other story I want to tell, which is really cool, part of my MO, part of my living life is to be curious and to constantly learn. And my rabbi walked out one day and I was very unsatisfied with the conversation. And I got a random email by a woman who you know, an international speaker who said, manifest your destiny, $25 for 5 sessions. I'm like, I'm in online. I want to manifest walking. And on the 4th session, I walked into her exercises and literally started dancing. I had visualized myself dancing. And I screamed for my husband, I'm like, you got to get up here. I'm dancing. I mean, I'm really like dancing. I couldn't walk 2 seconds ago and I'm dancing. And that moment changed my whole rehab because I realized it was in my head. If I could dance, I could actually walk. And that totally changed the whole trajectory of it. So, and then the other thing is I changed my whole career. I got into real estate and property technology and real estate technology during this time. Was it because I was so quiet that something was actually let in? But you know, your networks are everything. And the people that you know, to me, are everything. I've got an incredible ecosystem, people I give and take and share and live with. And somebody called me right at that time and said, hey, I've got a job that you need to take. It's right up your alley. And I said, and my head's upside down on the couch, you know, I'm sick. And he goes, well, you're going to get better, right? And I said, I don't know. They say I am. Like, all bets are off on my end. And literally, I negotiated over those 5 months a new job and a new track in my career, which has like been an amazing, given me an amazing 10 years. And the other thing is self-love, because I had to not rush it. It had its own process, and I had to let myself go through it. So I think that a couple things, and then I'll end. I looked up the definition of resilience, because this was like, to me, the ultimate being resilient. The ability to recover from setbacks, adapt well to change, and keep going in the face of adversity. And I think we've all told these stories today that are remarkably showing like remarkable resilience. The other piece I wanted to throw out is that resilient people show 3 characteristics: a staunch acceptance of reality. I mean, I had to accept this. There was no way out. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. And then a deep, deep belief that life is meaningful and worth it. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to believe that living, that we're here for a reason, and living is worth getting up and making it happen in whatever way we can, and the best way we can, depending on all of our things that we have to deal with and come with, visible or invisible. And that you've got to have the uncanny ability to improvise, because you know what? Things change all the time. So, so I'm going to literally, I started my consulting company. I left my old company. My company started a consulting company, went on a retreat to do some deep reflection. And I am going to help companies continue to build their practices through sales and channel strategies and visioning and facilitation, but resilience and being able to really get through personally or through the business is going to be core and center to what I do, because I've got to give back everything I've learned and the tools that I have picked up over the last 10 years and share them. Lessons learned I'll throw out there: invest in yourself, hard stop, courses, training, experiences. I heard at this retreat last week, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time to plant the tree is right now. And you've got to plant those seeds and keep going. Second, if you want to get there faster, work with a master. We're all experienced here. We are all masters in our own way. That is the way to get through this. Don't think you know everything and you can do it all on your own. You don't have to. And ultimately, for me, suffering is optional. What I become in life cannot and won't be taken from me. There you go. That's my story.
Oh my gosh. Can you believe Susan just told her story for the first time ever? Like right now. I am so touched and unbelievably honored, Susan. And that was truly amazing. Truly amazing. I'm so proud of you, and you inspire me so much. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, I will say that I thank you for sharing that. And I'm sort of shocked to hear what you're, as a body worker practitioner, like to hear what you went through and all of that. Like I was really on board. And the fact that you're saying in every moment, even as you're speaking, you're pushing through the pain to make it happen. And it's just so I'm sending, I lots of empathy for you right here. Thank you for that. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jason?
I just, wow, your story touched me so much. And then Andrea shocked me when she said that was the first time you told your story. I'm sitting here crying. I'm like, your resilience is just phenomenal. And I want to have a one-on-one conversation with you. Just awesome. Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks.
Much love, Susan.
Yeah, that was great, Susan. I mean, you're amazing. And yeah, just thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all your support.
Susan, please let people know how they can get in touch with you in the chat. And if anyone has any other comments for Susan, please put them in the chat. I want to make sure we have enough time for our last speaker, Brad. Last but not least, Brad also heard many, many wonderful, heartfelt words about Brad. He's a giver. He gives of himself to help others who go through trauma. And when I was looking on his LinkedIn, he has something very simple, yet succinct and powerful. And I wanted to read it to you. What I do for a living is not who I am, but rather I aspire to encourage, elevate, and provide a helping hand to others. If we are to pass anything on, it should be our intent to come alongside people and invest in them. Wow. So, Brad, I want to hear more. I'd love to get to know you and hear your story.
Thank you. I tell you something, after listening to all the speakers today, I'm so humbled to be able to go ahead and share a little bit about my background. You know, it's amazing. I look back at my life, and a lot of the things that where I'm at today is where I was instead of where I am today. I'm a recovering armadillo. And by that means up until a few years ago, I did not show my soft underbelly. I was driven. I was very not typical of the youngest child. My dad was a teacher. Dad was also an orphan and biracial. Dad was half Native American and half white, and grew up in an orphanage. So from the very beginning, he had things set against him. His family were sharecroppers, lost his dad and his oldest sister in a fire in 1943. Joined the Navy during Korean War. battle wounded, came back with a lot of horror. Back today, they would call it PTSD. Didn't have any words for it back then. So, you know, I grew up in a pretty good family. Dad was a teacher, mom was a stay-at-home mom. Unfortunately, like most kids in that environment, we ended up dealing with the mindset of the baby boomer era for male. You don't show any type of emotion. You grow up with that. You become what they call toxic masculine. And unfortunately, that ended up pervading my relationships, attachment issues, and dealing with my mom and how she ended up viewing me. What I heard from my mom at one point, she didn't want to be pregnant because she went pregnancy with my brother the year before, during one of the hottest times of the year, where I grew up in Central California. And here I am. She tells me this, and immediately in my head, it becomes, you're not worthy, you're unwanted. So that's how I transpired pretty much my entire life. And it was overcoming that by being a chameleon and being bigger than life in everything that I ended up doing. I was constantly competing with my dad. I was constantly competing with my brother. So it became joining the Navy. I wanted to be just like my dad, but to be better at that. And I did. I became a chief petty officer. Dad was second class. So here I had all this responsibility. I had people that were reporting to me. I was the leading chief. So I had all the stuff that was ended up going on. Same thing in my work life. I kept wanting to aspire and to be that guy at the top. I wanted to be the apex executive. And I told this to my professors when I was getting ready to graduate with my bachelor's, and they all said the same thing. Gosh, that's nice. We love hearing that from you guys. So in late 2010, I became the senior executive at a company, and I had my dream job. I was leading the activities of 37 people in a $4.5 million company, and everything was great for the most part, except for one very important part. The year before, in 2009, I'd been let go from a job that I loved. And that also meant that I had to drive 5.5 hours in order to continue on working. Did that for 2.5 years. It caused a strain on my marriage. 3 years before 2010, my oldest daughter from my first marriage drops out of college. She was getting her master's in psychology, as a matter of fact. She was working in her practicum and going to become a licensed marriage and family therapist. She was working as an art therapist at pediatric hospice. And I was always concerned for that because she's a hard empath and she has a difficult time in breaking herself away from that environment. I was constantly asking her, I says, are you making sure that you're talking with your professors and how you're feeling and those type of things? Yeah, Dad, I'm taking care of that. She started running away from herself and I started defending her. She was my daughter from my first marriage. And here I am married with, my other two daughters, and they're constantly asking questions. And I'm feeling like, I felt like, hey, you're kind of ganging up on her. Yeah, I know there's some issues that my daughters had with their oldest sister, but I still felt I had to be the protector. That really started creating a rift within my family. 2016, she drove her Mini Cooper into the side of a mountain, and she got taken to a trauma center in Loma Linda and stayed there for a number of weeks. Wasn't sure she was going to make it. She was on respirator. So those types of things that are happening. 2017, she takes another opportunity to take her life. Got put into a institution for make sure she wasn't going to be a danger to herself and kind of take a look to see whether or not, hey, is she going to be a danger? Do we need to go ahead and commit her? She got injured. Fast forward, she gets, goes to live with her mom. Her mom lives in a 9-story apartment building. They're going to go up on top of the roof and, with some friends and watch the sunset. Well, her mom asked her to do something. She says, Mom, it's going to take me a long time to go upstairs as it is. Can you go down and get the pop for what we need for tonight instead of me having to go down? It's just hard. So she went up on top of the 9-story building, and 1.2 seconds later, I no longer had an oldest daughter. So the challenge with that becomes, I started going to a really dark place. All the things that I had been hiding away from my family and the things that I had been feeling started coming up. Now, mind you, during this entire time frame, over the past number of years, I had led a faith-based grief recovery program called Grief Share, did that for 7.5 years. I was going to college to become a Christian counselor. And I thought, hey, I'm able to go ahead and deal with this. I lost my dad in 1980 from cancer, so I figured I'm pretty well, I can end up handling this. So far from the truth. What I was starting to find was I was losing me. As I was going to my therapist to finally start dealing with it, I just wasn't dealing with things very well. I was having a pretty toxic relationship with my now ex-wife. We just didn't communicate well. I didn't communicate my needs. I didn't communicate the fact that I felt that the relationship was over, but, you know, much like Mandy had talked about and others have talked about, you know, hey, I've been in the marriage for over 30 years. I figured I'm just going to stick it out. And she had asked me a number of times about divorce and whether or not I wanted a divorce. In my head, I said, yeah, but I don't want to be a failure again, you know, because I'd been divorced once before and dealing with that. So how do I end up dealing with the issues that I ended up having inside of me? How the fact that, you know, I didn't feel love from my wife, but being constant inquisition, not that she was a bad person, it was just kind of where we were at in our stage. It became, we were actively disengaged and disconnected. So we had that disconnectedness within our relationship, made some pretty poor choices. And that led in 2019 to me being kicked out of the house and us divorcing in January 30th. As I fast forward throughout that year, I'm finding new therapists because things just weren't going well. I wasn't getting any better. At the end of November of 2020, my boss called me into his office, wanted to have a meeting. We were just, you know, kind of talking about how things were going at work. And he's president of the company I reported to directly. And immediately coming in is the HR manager. And I went on 2 months of FMLA because they felt that my behavior was in such a way that I needed to take care of me. I wasn't taking care of myself fully. So at the end of 2020, came home and I did a dry fire suicide. It so scared me that I locked up all my firearms, haven't pulled them out since. And I had to make a decision. Who was I going to be? So I talked to my therapist and ended up taking some time out to stay with my mom and my brother out in California for about 3 weeks. And as I came out from that in January, I felt so much more empowered. I felt a peace that I hadn't felt. I said, "Oh, I'm in great shape." And then I meet Mike Paterano and Amy Lee. So we start going through working with them because I start looking at, hey, with all the stuff that I've had in my life, I want to be able to sit alongside other people that have gone through a lot of the same types of things that I had. Now, mind you, when I went through my FMLA, I had to go ahead and submit paperwork for my therapist. I was diagnosed with PTSD because of a lot of things and trauma that I've had in my life. So as I'm going through this and I'm talking to them, they say, hey, listen, we want to go ahead and sit down with you. We have this thing called breath framework and start working with them. And it wasn't until at that point, as I'm going through working with them and reading aloud some of my forgiveness letters to myself, to those that have hurt me and those that I've hurt, that I finally realized that I had something to offer and I had someone to love. And That was me. I was involved with a lady that I can relate to, Mandy, that I love very much, and I still love her. I'm just not in love. We were out to dinner, and I realized that the relationship that I had with her, though it was great, it wasn't in alignment with who I was at that particular time. It didn't align with my core values, and I had to make a decision that, and it was a hard one, and having a hard conversation and telling her it was over. There was a lot of tears. She's still my friend. She recognized that I still needed healing as the things that I needed to go through to grow. I'm in an interesting point right now because neither one of my daughters are speaking to me at the present time. We're estranged. But I have to allow that. I have to allow them to be, and I have to allow myself to be okay with it. It doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't hurt me. It just means that that doesn't affect my worth. I love Brene Brown. I probably read most all of her books as it stands right now. David Hawkins' Letting Go book was transformation for me because I was able to let go of a lot of that damage. It's so key. The biggest thing that I see as far as for the takeaways for courage today is to be open enough to share with others your deepest, darkest secrets and have that courage to face your fears. Because if you don't face your fears, you're just going to be doomed to repeat them over and over again. I'm at a place right now that I don't have the network of friends that I used to have, but it's at a point where I need that in order to grow, and that's okay. And I'm okay. I'm whole. I'm at a place now where I love me. I had that one individual. That's why I was talking, to Mandy earlier, because as I do my mirror work every day, that's the first thing that I tell myself in the morning. I love you, Brad. You're worthy. You're worthy of love, connection, and belonging, like Brene Brown always talks about. So I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate you. And I appreciate the fact just hearing my story.
You're amazing. And there was a reason that you were meant to go last. I had no idea why I was putting people in certain positions unless they told me they wanted to go a certain time. And I couldn't have wrapped it up better.
I thought you knew his story, that you lined it up for him to end on purpose. That was, oh my God, mic dropping, like, Brad, wow.
Yeah, it was funny too, because I was like so nervous about doing this today. And by the way, I even prepped.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, nope, I didn't even go off of any of it. I just said life unscripted.
You lived it. It's your story.
Yeah.
That's right. But I'm honored. I'm truly honored to have you here and for sharing those beautiful words. Any words for Brad? Ipek.
There's my friend.
Brad, you inspire me every day, as Jenny wrote down on the chat. And I didn't even know your story like this detailed, and you made me cry really badly. You owe me for that. but I'm speechless, and every day I'm reading what you're writing, and I'm seeing you changing, evolving, transforming. But from this point on, I will read everything you write from a very different perspective. I'm so glad you are doing the mirror exercise and tell you love yourself every day, and know that I love you too.
I love you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you from my heart.
Mike.
I try not to say much at these things, and I try to just sit in the background, observe. And Brad, I've heard your story at length and almost, probably deeper than anyone you've ever shared it with. And you never cease to amaze me in your strength and your courage and how you push yourself through. And truthfully, this is the first event that I've been able to make since moving and shifting and court dates and everything going on in my life. And that was after being here every single month, because I love what Andrea does, right? So when Andrea reaches out to me and says, I need people because I haven't had time, you know, me, I jump at the opportunity because of who I am, right? So let me stack the deck, since this is going to be the first time that I'm coming back, and bring people that I really care about and that impact me on a daily basis and share it with the world. And then I don't know Susie and I don't know Brian yet, right? So it's an opportunity to always meet new people, and I appreciate these worthiness rallies so much. And Andrea knows it, and I've met amazing people through these. Brad, your story is strength and courage, and Felicia, your story is strength. Everybody's story is strength and courage, right? This is, you know, this emotionally hits me every time, right? Every story, every person's adversities, everything that they fight through just to wake up each morning. You know, it's not even overcoming the big struggles, it's getting up every morning and pushing forward, right? And one thing that I've come to realize in these last couple weeks as I've gone through another transition, because I don't go through enough of them, is that we all are perfect, right? We're all our own version of perfect each day. And as long as we continue to push forward and grow forward and learn and evolve and want to be our best self with every choice we make, there is no wrong decision, right? There is no bad choices. There is no wrong choices. As long as we're willing to be accountable and live through them, that's what matters. And we're always the teachers, we're always the students, we're always learning and evolving and growing. And it's an honor to be here. And it's an honor when Andrea reaches out to me and says, I need help, right? Or anybody does for that sake. It's a privilege to be there for people. It's a privilege to put myself in their shoes and stand by their side and do my best to walk through it with them. And I really appreciate all the speakers. I appreciate Andrea for doing this, because this is my happy place, my emotional place, but happy place, right? Other than yelling at my kids for the last 2 hours as I'm trying to keep them calm somewhere in the house. And I hear 3 iPads, 2 TVs and everything in the background. It's okay. It's all okay. And thank you very much for everything and doing this.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Andrea. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. This has been truly incredible. If anything, I know we've gone a little over, but oh my goodness, there's always magic that happens in these things, in these gatherings. No amount of planning if I could have scripted this whole thing and really known each other's stories and kind of put more effort and strategy in who goes first and second. But this is the first time, again, I didn't know a lot of these people. And for the most of the times, I don't know people's stories. I just let and trust the journey, and it has never, ever, ever failed me. I couldn't have come up with a better session today. And it just all flowed naturally. Even like Mike just said right now, I couldn't have scripted that even better. I mean, it flows from his heart, and that's when the heart does the talking, you can't go wrong. So back full circle, be seen. But in order to be seen, you need to listen to your heart and see yourself first. I so admire each and every one of you. Love it. Love how you show each other kindness and hope as people are speaking. But to the storytellers today, thank you so much. You've made my day, you've made my month, you made my week. And till next time, we do these the last Saturday of every month. If you're interested in sharing your story, reach out to me, always looking for humans that want to spread kindness. Thank you so much for being here today.